Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you? Welcome back to America.
Hey, good day, mate. It's lovely to be back, eh?
Oh, God. I really thought we could avoid you trying to do bullshit Crocodile Dundee, but I don't guess that's possible, huh?
No, I'm actually doing Wally, who was my tour manager, who was basically an Australian hybrid of John Paul Shellnut.
Well, okay. Well, I don't know what all that means, but I know you had a great time. You were sending me lots of fun pictures, and it seems like you had such a good time that you spread the word to our mutual friend, Eric Bischoff, and now he's going to Australia in June.
Well, he's going to have a damn good time. I can promise him that. So it's going to be that'll be a good one for everybody. I know I had a blast, and the Australian audiences were fantastic. I can't say enough. It was a bucket list dream of mine to go to Australia. I got to experience it, and I'll definitely be back at some point.
So chat me up. What was the feedback you got about last week's episode, Wrestlemania 10?
Well, I think everybody, they all compared it to Wrestlemania 20, and most of the feedback I got was all positive. I think that we did a pretty damn extensive job going through all the different topics and all the shit that took place throughout. And I would also have to say everybody agreed that probably the greatest opening match in WrestleMania history was Owen Hart and Bret Hart.
Can we also agree that you were mistaken and Barry Windham was definitely not there?
Yeah, I'm not going for that.
Okay.
I don't give a fuck. Okay.
I like that you're going to dig your heels in on something silly, but let me tell you,
I always dig my heels in on silly shit. I'm a heel digger.
You dug your
I dig heels.
I'm trying to make a transition when you quit stepping on me.
Well, go ahead.
Give me a countdown.
And go.
You really dug your heels in last year when you were a part of filming something pretty special. We expected it to be on air by now, but in fact, it was delayed a little bit, but the wait is finally over. On Wednesday, April 10th at 9 p.m., you need to go find Viceland. These guys have put together a 6-part documentary series I cannot recommend enough. I've seen all but one of them. Each was better than the last. They're outstanding. It's called Dark Side of the Ring. Our great close personal friend, Evan Husney, helped put it together. But this is going to be a documentary series that uncovers controversies, tragedies, and even some true crime stories from professional wrestling's golden age. And they have a tremendous lineup. You and I saw the Bruiser Brody episode, I don't know, 2 Januaries ago, and it was phenomenal. And I said then, it might be one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. And they've only gotten better as I've seen more of them. And they're going to start out with a bang, man. April 10th is the match made in heaven. It's going to examine how art collided with real life in the mythical love story between the wrestling icons, Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, and of course how it exploded outside of the ring with tragic consequences. And you're all over the thing. And so was our friend Eric Bischoff, and I know Jim Cornette was a big part of this series. And is this the best documentary series you've ever seen on wrestling?
They did their homework, and it's going to be really interesting. The funny thing is, it was so damn long ago that I did the interviews. I totally forgot a lot of even what the hell that we talked about, but they definitely did their homework, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all just shakes out in the end. Can't wait.
Well, I don't want to give you spoilers for what all the other topics are. I think everybody who went to StarCast last year knows the Bruiser Brody one is out there. It hasn't aired yet, but it's going to as part of this series. But we're starting off with Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. Set your clock, set your calendars, throw a reminder in your phone. Wednesday, April 10th at 9 p.m. on Viceland. Really a phenomenal job. I was super entertained by the whole thing. And hopefully you've been entertained by what we've been doing here for you on the show. We're bringing you a pretty special episode this time, and it's WrestleMania X-Seven. But before we do that, because I know you're fired up about this, I want to go ahead and get this out of the way. You and I vouched for something a couple of weeks ago, and it's paid off. BetWithBruce.com is going to take you to the Philly Godfather where if you followed his picks so far in this March Madness tournament and you were a regular $100 bettor, you would have won $1,360. He's hitting on all cylinders. The last 6 tournaments, he hit 64.7% of the time. And now he's got a cool offer for the remainder of the tournament. It's only $49. You get all the picks. This is the same guy who called the World Series champion last year in August, and he called the Super Bowl champions, and he even predicted Trump would win the presidency when nobody else would. So I don't know what sort of deal with the devil this dude's made, but he's got the hookup and people are making money. I had a couple of my buddies who actually took advantage of this special, and they're blowing me up trying to take me to dinner because they won, and you will too. Go check it out. betwithbruce.com. There's a couple offers on there for free money at legal sports books as well. So take a look, betwithbruce.com. And you've met the Philly Godfather. It's pretty legit, huh?
He is he's more than legit. He is the man, and he amazes me because of his accuracy, and he does his homework. You're actually getting an insight on his picks, what he bets. Okay, these aren't, he's not selling picks. He's showing you his moves, what he is actually making with his own money, what he is putting out there. So if you want to be with a winner, as you said, his percentage is absolutely unheard of. Steve Maltese, the PhillyGodfather.com, and it's so easy to get to at betwithbruce.com. But if you want to win, go ahead, take advantage of some free money and take advantage of the best mover and the best prediction guy out there, the Philly Godfather.
And take advantage of our last live show in New York City. Can't believe this is really going to happen. It's our last one. It's in Brooklyn. It's right after the biggest Monday Night Raw of the year. And tickets are on sale now at bruceprichard.com. Probably the last time you and good old JR are going to be on stage together too. I think his WWE days are winding down. And if what you read on the internet is true, this is probably the last time you guys will be able to do something like this. And certainly the last time you and I will be doing a live something to wrestle in New York City. So pick up tickets right now, bruceprichard.com. I can't believe that it's our last New York show. It feels like our home away from home, but tickets are on sale now. Come join us, especially if you're in New York and you're a something to wrestle fan. This is it, bruceprichard.com. And it's on April 8th, the Monday after WrestleMania, right after Raw. It should be fun, especially if you've been consuming a little alcohol. Of course, you'll be fresh from work, but everybody else should be feeling good, loosened up.
Well, I'll be ready to rock and roll, man. I'll be feeling great.
Well, I'm feeling great about the hate I'm about to receive, because I'm just going to start off. I'm going to come in hot. Are you ready for this?
Go for it.
Wrestlemania X-Seven was overrated.
I disagree.
People have wanted this show for a long time. We're going to give it to you. Here's the thing that I just need to caution everybody with. If you love the show, there's not going to be a whole lot of entertainment in this show, because the best shows are the ones that we get to make fun of and shit on, and I get to yell at Bruce. So I'm not taking this stance of X7 is overrated to be combative with Bruce. I just think they fucked it up at the end. So if you want to hear me yell at Bruce, just hang on till the end. But before that, let's just, let's start from a different place. This is something you've teased, believe it or not, when we covered No Way Out 1998. And you said that was actually the first time you remember there being conversations about folks trying to make bids on WrestleMania and try to court WrestleMania to come to their city. And you remember that X7 is really the first time that happened. Carry me through the process and how WrestleMania came to Houston.
Well, there was a group, and still is a group. It's the largest building management group in the world, SMG. And SMG at the time had, in 1998, I guess it was 1999, in that time frame, they were purchasing stadiums, and they were purchasing, they built a lot of arenas, they manage all the arenas, and they were broadening their horizons by going out and purchasing stadiums to manage as well. So SMG had just purchased the rights to take over management for the Houston Astrodome. Mike McGee, who was president of SMG, started SMG. It was his company. Mike McGee had been the building manager of the Summit in Houston, Texas. He's the one who built the Summit, and his company managed the Summit along with many other buildings across the world. And Mike's company had just come in, and along with Jeff Gaines, who at that time was the manager of the Summit. They were going to sell the Summit, and Compaq Center had the naming rights, but they were in the process of selling the Summit to Joel Osteen and Joel Osteen's church. But throughout all of this, Mike McGee and Jeff Gaines came up in the middle of a show while we were doing a Monday Night Raw at the Compaq Center, hashtag Summit or /Summit. And they said, hey, we're running the Dome now. We want WrestleMania. What do we have to do? And Briscoe and I, almost at the same time, said, pay us. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you pay for the Super Bowl, don't you? So, yeah, but that's the Super Bowl. I said, oh, fuck that. You want WrestleMania, pay for it. And they kind of looked at each other and ran away. Show's going on and so on and so forth. And at the end of the night, Mike and Jeff met with Vince and told him they were interested in having WrestleMania there and so on and so forth. Long story short, they came back to us and they created a very unique agreement that enabled us to come into Houston, come into the Astrodome, along with all of the Astro facilities, the Astro Hall, the Astro Arena. We utilized all of the facilities on the grounds for WrestleMania, for fan access, and to be able to have an entire week of WWF events. So that was the first time that a building and or a city had come in and said, we want you to bring WrestleMania here. We're willing to make it attractive for you. Now, it's nothing like it is now. However, that was the first one. That was the first step of being that brand that the cities wanted and that buildings wanted to bring in. And they had no idea the effect that it would have on the city and the bottom line. And that's when those studies really started taking place and taking hold, how much revenue that we would bring into a city when we would come in for a week. So this particular show was the model and the first one to come in, and everybody wanted to work with us, and we made it work. And it was the doings of Jeff Gaines and Mike McGee on the building side and on the city side that made all of that happen.
You going to give us an idea of how the deal would be structured or what it looked like?
Well, it was just made it so that there was no money out of our pocket. In addition, we had, I believe it was the first national, we really had two national sponsors, but one of them had to be a local sponsor. The national sponsor, I believe, was Mars. But it was we had a national sponsorship that kicked in. We also had a local sponsorship, which was Gallery Furniture, which spent a lot of money to make the WrestleMania the success that it was locally. And that helped because Mattress Mac, my good friend Jim McInvale, and Gallery Furniture, they were looking to go national as well during that time. So it gave them an awful lot of exposure. It was, I don't know that there was a whole lot, and I don't know per se. I know that there wasn't a lot of money exchanged on the building side and the city side. However, there were a lot of things that were made available to us that wouldn't have been made available to us. In addition to that, there wasn't a large outlay of money on our part.
So do you believe
they absorbed a lot of that?
Do you believe you got the Dome for free or nearly free?
I say we got an unbelievable deal on the Dome and the facilities all around it.
Okay.
For that use. And in addition to that, we got promotional value locally. We were on roughly 200 trucks that were around the city every single day. Gallery Furniture, from the moment that Mac shook our hand and we announced WrestleMania, Mac had 200 trucks wrapped in WrestleMania logos and stars. His trucks looked like the WWE trucks look now. And they were all over Houston every single day, 200 trucks. In addition to that, every single one of his advertisements, which he's on you turn on the TV in Houston, anytime during the day, Mattress Mac was on Save You Money. And don't forget Wrestlemania at the Astrodome, Reliant Astrodome. But it was a promotion that was absolutely unbelievable. And on top of that, when we went in to talk to Mattress Mac originally, it was, we were looking for just such a small amount of money because that's what we were used to. And in the meeting, I've known Mac since I was a kid, and he says, what kind of money are you looking for? And before Bob Collins could get it out, I said $1 million. And Mac laughed, but he didn't say no. And he walked around with a very large check in his pocket, is the down payment for probably 3 weeks, and just waiting to give it to us because we kept on saying we were going to be in town and we would miss each other. But he paid an ungodly amount of money. And when I say that, in advertising that absolutely could not have been replicated and that nobody could have afforded on their own. But on his rotation, you know about buying in bulk for advertising locally. Mac was on every station, pretty much damn near every break. And in every single ad, he had either Ric Flair or Eddie Guerrero, somebody, Eric Bischoff. No, Eric Bischoff wasn't on that one. He was on a later one. But we had just everybody under the sun on those shows. And Flair wasn't on that one either. It was on the later one. But it was insane.
That's interesting to me that you still used a local businessman for that, and it was for such a gargantuan amount of cash. But nonetheless, an interesting story. Talk to me a little bit about, when you decide that you're going to run a dome, how far in advance do you ink a deal like this with the city, with the chamber, with the building, whoever? How many months in advance do you know we're coming to this dome for this show on this day?
We knew a year in advance.
Now, allegedly behind the scenes now, there may be multiples, but there is at least one guy who does nothing but work on WrestleMania. And this year at WrestleMania, he'll already be working on next year's.
Correct. Before this year's WrestleMania, I mean, they were working on, Tampa pretty much almost last year. Once they had secured New Jersey, I'm sure they were working on the next one after that.
Not just, the actual building itself, but I mean, they start working on the stage and they start working on, where all the hotel, all the logistics of the actual show. And then just the massive undertaking it is to get all the other pieces of this show outside of the stadium together. Right.
Absolutely. And at the time, that man was Bob Collins, and Bob was a promoter's promoter. He wasn't a marketing guy. He was a promoter. He came from Ringling Brothers, and he loved the hype. He loved getting out and creating new and different ways to promote events. So Bob eventually became the WrestleMania guy, and that was all he did. He and his staff worked on WrestleMania all year long to make it the biggest event. And you always have to be thinking ahead as to what's next. Because once you get one secured, that's the beginning of the work. Now you have to do everything else. But also in the middle of that, you have to be thinking about the next year and where you're going to go and what you're going to do with it then.
Let's talk a little bit about the main event, and we're going to circle back to it. But Austin Rock, the two hottest stars in the business, how far in advance did you know that's the main event of WrestleMania 17? Of course, barring injury. I mean, you could never predict that, but if everything goes smooth sailing, we want these two guys on top. When would that decision have been made, to the best of your guesses?
Probably in August, November. Probably in that time frame. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about WCW, and we're going to get into more of this, but I guess I should say, I'm not going to let this episode become all about the closure of WCW. And I think most famously, people remember that WCW had their last Nitro just 6 days before this WrestleMania. And we're going to talk about that, of course, but I'm not going to talk about that last Nitro a ton because we've already covered it in our archives at somethingtowrestle.com. There's a whole show on the last Nitro. But the thing that people really remember the most about that last Nitro is that Vince McMahon appeared on the show. And at the end of the show, as Nitro is going off the air, you guys snuck a little commercial in there for WrestleMania, which is just genius. Carry me through the extra, oomph you think that may have gotten for the show, if any, or was it just high fives all around because it was cool and sort of putting your flag in enemy territory?
Well, we owned it. It was no longer enemy territory, so we owned it. We were going to utilize every opportunity that we had, and the fact that we were able to do it on TNT was just one more avenue to promote WrestleMania. So, been a fool not to. You've got it, and it's there, so use it.
I'm glad that you said that, because you said it's there, you've got it, use it. Obviously, we know that we're going to see some WCW wrestlers in a luxury box at this show. Was there ever any consideration in the weeks leading up to this where it becomes apparent that the WCW acquisition is going to happen? It's no longer rumor and innuendo, it's real. Is there ever a consideration for, hey, let's try to get this guy or that guy and do something at WrestleMania in the ring?
No. And here's the reason why. First of all, that didn't take place until a week and a half before WrestleMania. The finality of it, the actual purchase going through, so on and so forth. We were out of the running, so we thought, and then all of a sudden back in, and it took place, and it took place, as we've stated, very quickly. So when we got down, we knew what we had purchased. We had purchased the assets, and we had purchased the tape library and some other assets, but there was no commitment to talent at all because we didn't know what we had. We didn't have all of their contracts, and to try and sort through all of that in the time frame that we had, damn near impossible. So the main names, they were all under AOL, Time Warner contracts with huge guarantees that we were not going to assume. We're not even going to entertain it. Plus, I don't think that a lot of that talent would have wanted to come over at the time because they were getting guaranteed money to do nothing. So to that effect, it was a non-issue. In addition to that, we had WrestleMania booked. And trying to force something in there, there was preliminary talk of, the question was asked, do we use them in the Shane Vince match? Is possibly bringing those guys in. And from the get-go, Vince was adamant, no, it's not about them. It's about Vince and Shane, and that it needed to remain that family issue and stay there. If you bring in other guys, it would muddy it up and it would just confuse them, because the guys that we had, the very few talent that we kept on and that we absorbed their contracts, I don't think anybody would have known them anyway. They wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have been any impact anyway. So that was nixed from the get-go, that we're staying with the storylines that we have. Yes, it was discussed initially, thrown out there. Do we use these guys? And it was very quickly shot down because the story was the McMahon family story, not the WCW story. We would regroup after the fact when we know what we have with WCW, and we would take it from there. But we still didn't know what the hell we had. It was all very, very fluid, and it was a living, breathing organism.
Speaking of living, breathing organisms that you didn't really know what you had, the XFL. I think a lot of people forget this is happening at the exact same time. ECW is going out of business. WCW is going out of business. The XFL circling the drain, man. In the March 26th Observer, Meltzer would write, the business woes of the XFL continued this week, with the 317 game becoming the lowest rated television show in the history of Big Four network prime time, drawing a 1.6 rating and a 3 share for the Birmingham Bolts versus the Las Vegas Outlaws. both from a combination of March Madness and a fallout of the tease from the previous week not being delivered that was doomed to kill the next week's rating. The UPN game the next night drew a 1.0. So just horrible ratings. And NBC responds by quietly sending word out that they're looking to produce inexpensive dramas for Saturday night next season. And at an advertisers conference, they start selling the fall season. The XFL is never mentioned or brought up. So NBC is already realizing, we got to get out of this thing. When you think back to this time of Wrestlemania X-Seven and you think about, you're about to have the biggest WrestleMania ever, ECW is going under, WCW is going under, and the XFL, maybe its better days were behind us. Maybe it was just better left as an idea. In fact, what's Vince McMahon like right here? This feels like he's got too much going on.
Well, I think that Vince is one of those people that the more he has going on in some regards, the better he can be. At this time, there was so much shit going on, and he was involved in every single bit of it. It was chaotic. I mean, it was just crazy because we're trying to take care of our shows. In the middle of all this shit, you've got XFL games going on. And by this time, I was so far removed from the XFL, you couldn't, if you mentioned the word football to me, I probably would have popped. So I was so far out of it and so far away from it, I didn't want to know. And Vince made such an effort to be available to everybody that he wasn't going to let any one thing get more of his attention so as to neglect anything else. So for us, he was very readily available, and we were constantly talking creative, and we were constantly looking at what's next. And for the weeks before that, or the week before, it was, all right, if we acquire WCW, what the hell do we do with it? And is it worth acquiring? And it came down to the assets of the tape library, and that was all they were really interested in. Do we really want anything else? There wasn't a lot of interest in anything else. So for us on our side of it, it was the XFL wasn't so much even a distraction because we didn't get hind tit. We were, we were in the forefront, and WrestleMania was in front of us. And on the wrestling side of things, that's what we were focusing on. In the middle of it, we got thrown in the monkey wrench with, oh, by the way, we need to go down to Panama City and produce the last Nitro. Oh, shit. Okay. And by the way, we've got WrestleMania coming up, and in the middle of getting to the biggest show of the year, you have all of this other shit going on. The XFL for us was get them through their big game at the end of the year, and we'll see what happens at the end. Let us know. But I don't know that anybody was that dug in on the XFL from our side, especially like myself, Michael Hayes, and Brian Gewirtz, who had experienced it firsthand. We were like, thank you, God, get us out.
Well, Dick Ebersol, who's, of course, heading up NBC, says it's going to have to show a marked swing in the ratings in the postseason for it to have a real shot beyond this year, just from an advertising standpoint. He says that a final decision won't be made until the end of April, but really anybody reading the tea leaves knows that, well, we're about done here. And so is the experiment of Vince McMahon working with Jesse Ventura. He brought Jesse into the XFL to be a football commentator. And it's making the rounds, of course, that because he is a politician, that he maybe isn't doing the best job. And McMahon even comments and says, he's on thin ice. We've made mistakes. And I think our biggest was our selection of announcers. We need football announcers, not WWF announcers. Our research shows people don't like him on the XFL. He's too over the top. Hyperbole turns people off. They know when you're telling the truth. Is it weird for Vince McMahon to say that? Because it feels like that's exactly what he wants in wrestling.
Well, it is what he wants in wrestling. What he was saying is that the football audience didn't want that in football. So the the conundrum was that football people didn't want wrestling. Wrestling people didn't want, football. It was weird. And the funny part about it is Dick Ebersol and the NBC guys were big time in favor and really made a play for Jesse Ventura, because they felt that Jesse, being the governor of Minnesota, his high profile in the political world, would get eyeballs on the product from an outsider looking in. That what the hell is Jesse going to say now? What the hell is he going to do that's going to be controversial in this other world? So NBC is just as much to thank for that as anybody. And, the XFL, the first time around, man, it was an experiment that you learned an awful lot that, hopefully going forward that they won't make the same mistakes and they'll learn from the experiment last time. But it was, in many ways, it was two different camps that would come together on a weekend and fight it out a lot of times, because you had the WWF camp, and then you had the NBC and UPN camps that they had different ways of doing business, and we had different ways of doing business. So in between the two, it was different philosophies that didn't always meet that well in the middle.
One of the things that comes out about the XFL is that it looks like you guys may be moving to TNN and UPN. The reason I bring this up, and we've did a whole episode on the XFL at somethingtowrestle.com. You should go check it out, by the way. One of the more underrated episodes we've done. TNN is where ECW was, and Paul Heyman would go on TV back in the day and sort of blame the WWF or blame the network for falling in love with Vince McMahon and the WWE. Chat me up here. Do you think those were related at all?
That what was related?
ECW not being, the WWE is going to consider bringing football to TNN. Obviously there is a relationship there. Talk to me about how that could have affected ECW in your opinion.
I don't know that it would affect ECW at all. ECW didn't deliver ratings. That's the only thing that affected ECW on TNN. The football had nothing to do with that, to my knowledge.
We've also talked about the death of ECW in the archives. I feel like I'm saying that a lot today. But they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on April 4th, claiming $8.8 million in outstanding debts with only $1.3 million in assets, which meant the company was $7.5 million in debt. And, the biggest debt is to the family of Paul Heyman, $3.8 million. And Paul himself even declares personal bankruptcy in the wake of ECW going down. And, this is just a tangled mess. We've touched on it before. Chat me up here about how this all came to be, because it does feel like a bit of a perfect storm. A lot of the guys in ECW's locker room were not exactly aware of exactly what was going on with the company. And then all of a sudden, Paul Heyman shows up to do commentary. We just touched on this recently. He's filling in for a Jerry Lawler who just walked out. So, where the king was, now Heyman is, and ECW is no mas. Chat me up about how that all came to be and what the potential effect on Wrestlemania and all of this happening at the same time is.
Well, obviously Paul was in financial straits and looking to get out. Paul needed a job. So Paul had agreed to come in and work with us, help out in creative. And when the Lawler situation came about, Paul was right there. He was a good fit. And I really forgot how damn good Paul was on color commentary until watching WrestleMania 17 this week. He's good. I hate to say that. I work with him, but Paul, it was no secret. ECW, they lost their TV. Their business was not doing well. Guys weren't getting paid allegedly. And Paul was in a bad way. So Paul had to declare bankruptcy, and Paul had to put everything in, to to get out of the mess that he was in. And so when it all came down to it, the same thing pretty much, where WWE went in to take what assets and help through the bankruptcy court and do what they could. But we had helped Paul all the way through a lot of that. And then it just got to the point where no matter how much we helped, the company wasn't going to survive at that point. They did not have, just didn't have the structure to do it and continue on. And I don't think the talent had the confidence. But if there was anything that was really fucked up, there wasn't a lot of communication with talent at all during the whole thing. And Paul would be the first one to tell you that it was actually, Tommy Dreamer that turned the lights out on ECW, not even Paul.
Well, perhaps the lights wouldn't have been turned out if Heyman had Robinhood. You see, Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission free. And while other brokerages charge you up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all of your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can get started investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. In fact, it's so easy, even Bruce Prichard can do it. They've got very easy to understand charts, market data, and you can place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as the 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. And now Robinhood is giving listeners of Something to Wrestle a free stock, like Apple, Ford, or Sprint, all to just help you build your portfolio. Go claim your free stock right now and sign up at wrestle.robinhood.com. It's a free stock, bro. What are you waiting on? Go to wrestle.robinhood.com. And Bruce, this is so easy. You're even doing it with that pile of money that Vince McMahon's giving you these days, right?
I am doing it, and it is, well, I don't know another way to say it, but it is simple, it is easy, and yes, it's even easy enough that I'm doing it. I got my free stock, and you can too by simply going to wrestle.robinhood.com and do something with all that money you got hanging around.
Well, let's talk about something else hanging around for the WWF. This content issue has been on and off criticized, not just here in America, but in Canada as well, including TSN. And there's some trouble here based on the salacious content, the questionable content, the risque content of Monday Night Raw. And Vince McMahon doesn't exactly make anything better when he visits Bob Costas on the record. And they're trying to pin him down about Trish Stratus being stripped down on Raw and being forced to bark like a dog. And the timing of that is coincidental with a Canadian Broadcast Standards Council ruling that comes down on April 10th, which is answering a lot of viewer complaints about the show. And they're bringing up Mae Young giving birth to a hand, and they're calling it vulgar, sleazy, sexist, and violent. Some real issues here. And the panel comes down on both TSN and Raw as War for code violations, in particular violating the National Television Code regarding sexist portrayals and remarks made during the broadcast by the likes of Jim Ross and Chris Irvine, who we know as Chris Jericho, including references to female characters on the show as wearing a $2 walking suit, that horny little she-devil, a filthy, dirty, disgusting, brutal skank, bottom feeding trash bag hoe. Yeah. Of course, the council is also finding fault with TSN for failing to provide adequate advisories during Raw to give them a heads up of the type of content that they're going to be seeing. And as a result, advertisers actually start to pull out a little bit. Pep Boys pulls out and puts a statement out. This is, interesting because it does feel like it was a prolonged problem. It feels like it started in 97. Here we are 4 years later. We're still talking about it, but clearly it's worked. All your competition's going out of business. Revenue's never been higher. But for whatever reason, it's finally catching up a little bit in Canada. But it's weird, in hindsight, that they didn't edit some stuff, like when Rhino gored Molly Holly. They didn't edit that, which I think's interesting. What do you remember about the trouble with TSN?
I just remember it being another Canadian issue that, as you said, that there were some things that they edited, some things that they didn't, and they like to pick and choose. So you couldn't really tell what side they were on and what the hell they were going to be upset about or what they wouldn't. And they had the ability to edit every single thing that came into them, and they had the shows in advance, and they were able to, if there was something that might be the least bit questionable, we would inform them ahead of time and let them know, give them a heads up. So a lot of that goes on TSN. And a lot of that is after the fact, if they might get heat from particular groups where they would react. They were more reactive than proactive. And we tried to be proactive by letting them know, hey, this is what we're doing. This may be questionable. This is something you may want to look at. And if they felt it was okay, they would air it. That was their call. They decided what went on their network and what have you. Yes, it was controversial, and yes, it was a different time. It was a completely different time in society. You just have to do what it is that you can do. But those things were things that were taking place on the Canadian side where we were assured, no, everything's fine, and then they would be upset again over little things, but they wouldn't be upset over other things. So it just was a constant ongoing issue with folks at TSN, and depending upon what got the public riled up or what got some particular watchdog group riled up at the time.
Well, you guys certainly got Bob Costas riled up. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but this appearance is something that lives on forever. People love to show clips of this and highlights of this. It's Vince McMahon sitting down with Bob Costas on an HBO show on March 14th. It's called On the Record, which was a new show for Bob at the time. And he's clearly trying to play gotcha, a former friend of the company who was at every WWF event that he could ever get to and couldn't wait to put it over and ham it up and was a wrestling fan. But here, man, he's really trying to take Vince to task, and his behavior is, questionable, you might say. A lot of people were really focused on Vince's behavior here. However, a lot of people will say, McMahon apologists would say, Vince was a showman. He was just, making it entertaining and being a little over the top, but it did get interesting at times, to say the least. Of course, the first half of the interview was talking all about the XFL. And then they started to talk about the wrestling angles, where we touched on Trish Stratus disrobing and barking like a dog. And then Costas is bringing up crotch grabbing and pointing at the crotch and saying, suck it, and all that stuff. And McMahon just goes nuts, and he's screaming at Costas, don't raise your voice at me. And things get off the rail, where he says something like, shut your mouth and let me answer the question. Were you there for the filming of this? And if not, what did you hear back from Vince about how it went after the fact?
No, I wasn't there. I saw it. And it was, again, you have two different schools of thought on that. There are the sports purist and the Bob Costas followers. And then there are the wrestling fans and the followers of the WWF that felt that they were being vindicated by Vince, and his reaction was warranted by continually being cut off and by not being allowed to answer the questions. And Costas bringing up, he went to old statistics and went to old examples, and he had plenty of new shit to go to, but he didn't do his homework, and he didn't particularly, I thought that they both didn't come off well. However, being on our side, it was nice to have somebody that would stick up for it. And yeah, Vince is a showman, and Vince is going to make sure that whatever he does, people are going to be talking about it. Like you say, people are still talking about it today because of the performance. So calculated or not, people are still talking about it today, and he made his point. And it was great television that people can point back to and go, oh my God, you got to see this. This wasn't planned. Or was it? We'll never know.
Go out of your way to find it. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere, but it is interesting because people, as you said, still talk about this. It's probably as famous of a Vince McMahon interview that will ever exist. You know, when Vince comes back and discusses this with you, does he say, I mean, is it just move on? Or, I mean, is he really focused on that motherfucker, Bob?
No. You know, Vince was on Bob's show, and Vince knew, I think, a lot of respects what the hell he was getting into. So Vince isn't the kind of guy that's going to harp on that kind of shit. He did his thing and moved on. Now, when I say he did his thing and moved on, we're still commenting about it all these years later, and he has talked about it and used it, but would then take that particular situation and use it to talk about the XFL, to talk about WrestleMania coming up, to talk about everything else around it. So no matter how you view it, it was a beautiful promotional tool, good or bad, to get people talking.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you guys were getting people talking with for the local promotion. This is your home market. So you're probably, we've never talked about this, so I'm just leaping here. Probably more involved in the local promotion of this WrestleMania than any other, just because it's your home market. Fair to say?
Yes, I was. I was involved heavily in the local promotion, and just probably more so than normal.
You know, we've talked about, and I think one of our best episodes we ever did was the 1997 Royal Rumble. Go out of your way to find that one if you haven't already. It's a time when the business is down for the company, but they swing for the fences and want to run a big dome show. So we talked about all the promotions they ran, from Dr. Pepper cans to Taco Bell offers and everything in between, just to fill the place up. Pricing strategies, everything business wise. What was different about this show, or maybe if nothing was different, chat me up about what the local promotion looked like. You've talked to us a little bit about Gallery Furniture and Mattress Mac, and I feel like we've talked about him a lot here on the show. Besides Gallery Furniture and his spot load on every major cable network and the big four broadcast networks, what did the local promotion look like to raise awareness for WrestleMania here in Houston this year?
Well, I want to say that it may have been one of the first times that we had a lot of major billboard. We did a lot of billboards throughout the city for probably 4 months, from early January on, about WrestleMania. So that was something that was different. It was a major billboard campaign where we were everywhere. Everything with Mac, and it all does come back to Mattress Mac and Gallery Furniture, because he was the exclusive local sponsor. Plus he got that national exposure as well. So we were trying to help him in a lot of ways, and him helping us. Local events. They had a huge tennis tournament here in town. We had guys out there doing that. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, which is probably the largest event that takes place every year in Houston. And they would have a stock show every year. Plus they would have the rodeo go on with major music acts every night. And that goes on for 2-3 weeks, whatever it is. We had a big presence in that as well. So we partnered with a lot of people. And the crazy thing, and I can't believe I'm going to actually tell this story, but the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo was run by folks, judges, and just different, the pillars of the community, if you will. All right. People that have businesses and have a stake, and they're very big in kids' scholarships and ranches and taking care of children and agriculture and what have you. But they're also some of the most cliquish bastards you'd ever want to meet in your life. And Mattress Mac, many years before this, had gone on, and every day at the rodeo, at the stock show, they would choose, for example, a grand champion chicken. This is the best chicken. This is the greatest chicken that this child has raised this year. And then they would auction it off. and they would get extraordinary amounts of money for a chicken. Then they would auction off the grand champion pig. Then they would auction off the grand champion lamb, and every animal there, they would have a grand champion and have an auction each day for the grand champion. Several years before, Mattress Mac had purchased every grand champion animal that was auctioned off, except for the main event. And the main event is the grand champion steer. That's the one that commands the most money. That's the one that everybody shows up to because it's the last day of the rodeo and the auctions and the stock show. So everybody shows up for it. And it's a big, big deal. You buy the grand champion steer, you're on the front page of the newspaper the next day. Well, along the way, Mattress Mac bought all the grand champion animals. And when you buy the grand champion, man, you're on the news. Everybody comes to interview you. And every single time they'd come to interview Mattress Mac, he'd talk about, well, you know what? This grand champion chicken reminds me of the great solid wood furniture we have at Gallery Furniture, 6006 I-45 North between Tidwell and Parker. He turned every interview into a commercial, which really upset the hierarchy of the rodeo. When we went to the rodeo and we explained to them what we wanted to do and we were coming in, we're the next event in the Astrodome, they were all gung-ho until we said we're sponsored by Gallery Furniture. So the year that Mac bought all the grand champions, I say he bought all of them except for the main event, the grand champion steer. The reason being, the higher-ups in the rodeo all got together and they said, this son of a bitch is using our rodeo and using our auction as a commercial. And we don't want him to be a part of it. So they all got together. And when Mac was bidding on the steer, they bid him up. And they outbid him. They thought, okay, he's going to pay big time for this. Mac walked out. So they got stuck paying an exorbitant amount for the grand champion steer. Where do you think the media went? They went to the guy that bought every grand champion except the steer and interviewed him. He says, well, you know, I guess it wasn't meant to be. I guess I just need to head on back 6006 I-45 North between Tidwell and Parker and sell me some solid wood furniture. We've got a great sale going on right now, and we're going to celebrate all the money that I saved today. You're going to be able to save today at Gallery Furniture. A master promoter. But the rodeo had a problem with us being associated with Gallery Furniture. So much so that a dear friend of mine who was on the board, I went to him for help. And I said, can you help me out here? And we had a sit down, and it was like an old mafia sit down almost, with some older gentlemen and I.W. Marks, Irv Marks, who was dear friend of mine. His son Brad's still a great friend of mine. But he sat down with me and with these other guys and convinced them. It was like, and Irv actually said, he goes, no, I vouch for Bruce. And if Bruce says that this is a good thing, I say it's a good thing, we should let them do what they want to do, because we wanted to allow Mac and us to go in and bid on the grand champion steer. And Mac wanted to buy that damn thing. So we made it so that Mac would be able to bid on the steer. And they were like, okay, he can come in, and Mac didn't want to be a part of it because they didn't want him. So it kind of brought everybody together, and we ended up day of the auction for the steer going in, and Mac spent $660,000 on a steer with Steve Austin there by his side, and Steve bidding with Mac, and it was all over everything. Promotion that you couldn't buy. Well, you could for $660,000. But that was one of those stories that people shake their head at and go, what? It's a rodeo, but very political and very cliquish in so many ways.
Well, you know what's not cliquish? WWE Supercard Season 5. This week's episode of Something to Wrestle was brought to you by WWE Supercard Season 5. Step into the squared circle with rectangular cards WWE Supercard is the collectible card battle game enjoyed by the millions and millions of WWE fans. It's going to feature your favorite WWE superstars, legends, and more. The big names: The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, AJ Styles, Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, and Ronda Rousey. Crush your opponents in real-time player versus player matches. Earn exclusive rewards in Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber matches. Participate in weekly rotating events and even compete in King of the Ring tournaments to earn the top cards. Season 5 of WWE Supercard is available now for free in the Apple App Store, Google Play, and the Amazon App Store. And for all of our loyal listeners, we have a very special gift for you. Check out wwe.2k.com/wrestle to get your free card pack and to help you boost your card deck and get a leg up on the competition. I'll give that to you one more time. It's wwe.2k.com/wrestle, and you're going to get a free card pack to help you boost your card deck and get a leg up on the competition. wwe.2k.com/wrestle. And these are our boys, man. I love 2K. It's a fun game, and this is a fun little wrinkle to the game. I like this.
Yeah, Raymond actually gave me a nice little peek into it. My son Kane has it and I can't get him out of his room now. Go do your homework, Kane. But he loves it as well.
Kane is 41 years old. Why are you yelling to do his homework?
Because he's going to college and he's got to do homework. And he's not 41, he's 20. That's the other Kane, and he wishes he was 41.
Oh, I thought your son was 40. You walk like you have a 41-year-old son.
Well, I do.
Okay. All right, so
it's tough in the delivery room.
Let's keep it going here. I guess we should touch on, you know what, before we get to the show, let's just talk about it. The video hyping up The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin with Limp Bizkit, My Way. Is this the top 5 best music videos in the history of pro wrestling?
I watched it twice in the show. I just went back because it was so fucking good. Yes, I'd probably say it is probably the best. You had so much to work with, and it was like the song, the lyrics were written for the match, almost. Good shit.
Outstanding. We'll try to link it on our social media at Prichard Show on Instagram, at Prichard Show on Twitter. One of the all-time best videos for sure. Let's get to, we can't really do it justice. So I'm just going to tell you to go find it or look for our link to it and enjoy it. Just pause what you're doing and go watch it and come back. It's that good. Wrestlemania X-Seven, directly from the Observer here, in almost every way was the culmination of the wrestling boom. What an opening line to the Observer. Do you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, it really feels like it with ECW going down, WCW going down, WWF's hotter than ever, major dome show, biggest WrestleMania ever. I think he nailed it.
The two biggest stars in the business at the time going head to head. Yep.
Much like the fantasy of WrestleMania 3, which was the high peak of the 80s wrestling boom at the Pontiac Silverdome, this show, 14 years later, was the all-around greatest major show the World Wrestling Federation ever produced.
I'd have to agree with that too.
While WrestleMania 3 was a good overall show in front of the record crowd, it had an atrocious main event that time, and memories have been very kind to really only one great match. The in-ring standards of the WWF and the new crew of wrestlers have gone through the roof in the past 2 years, blowing away the quality of any previous time period. WrestleMania X-Seven had a few bad matches, but its 3 best matches were on par and in ways even better than the main event of the Stampede. And it was a 4-hour show with far better production. And it always seems better when the big show of the year delivers, as opposed to it being a monthly show being off the charts and then soon forgotten. Why do you think that is? I totally agree with that, but it does feel like this allure and the magic of WrestleMania rings true. You know, people still talk about a WrestleMania moment, and I know it was a big moment when Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair main evented a pay-per-view Hell in a Cell a few years ago, but it will pale in comparison to the women main eventing WrestleMania this year. Why do you think that is? That, you know, the Hell in the Cells and the Judgment Days and the backlashes, they just come and go, but there is something about WrestleMania that just, you don't forget. It sticks with you. Like, people will eventually forget, you know, what pay-per-view you won the belt at here or there, but they remember what you did at WrestleMania.
Because it's the granddaddy of them all. It's the Super Bowl. It's the World Series. It's everything. It's WrestleMania. It is the biggest spectacle of the year. And that's the moment where people can shine and make their moment, because at that point in time, they're probably going to be seen by the largest audience for a special event than they ever will.
We should talk about the main event a little bit now, because Meltzer obviously says this is the big story. And it was. And it's really the reason that I think this show is a little overrated. Meltzer would write, the big story in the ring was the Steve Austin heel turn, which went ignored by the live crowd in Houston, who were largely there to cheer Austin to win the WWF title by any means necessary. That included working a heel style from the start and gaining the title due to lots of help from Vince McMahon, even a handshake and a beer drinking toast after the fact. The Astrodome crowd largely ignored that McMahon was even there, only seeing Austin win the title. And it was very interesting because the crowd watching on television, led by the announcer reactions, no doubt reacted completely different than the fans in the building, as shown on Raw the next night while still in Texas. The Austin turn had been on the books for months. Months ago, it seemed natural due to the ascension of the younger Rock, who had eclipsed Austin's popularity. In recent weeks, plans didn't change, even though the Vince McMahon standard of listening to the audience would have made him take a different path. As even with Austin's nastier demeanor and playing the psychological heel role, the crowd was beginning to boo Rock when the two confronted each other, and the company was even having to confiscate signs at television tapings. Do you remember that this was the plan months ahead of time? The fans started to maybe shit on it a little bit because they're booing the Rock, which isn't the desired result. And instead of pivoting and going with it, you start confiscating signs and just,
first of all, no. And we knew we were going to encounter that because it was a babyface match. And when you have a babyface match, they're going to choose sides. The fact that we're doing it in Texas, 90 miles from where Steve grew up in Victoria, we knew it was going to be a pro Austin crowd. However, we also felt very confident we'd be able to tell that story. And on the build, you had Austin, he was a babyface. Rock was a babyface. So people were choosing on the way to WrestleMania. We knew we would encounter that. But also felt after you get over that hurdle on the backside, the association with Mr. McMahon would help make Steve a stone cold heel. I don't know that Steve could have, done anything in the middle of the ring. And I don't know that the audience at that time was going to boo Steve Austin. There was even a bit of me as I'm watching this and you listen to the crowd that I wonder if they thought Vince was turning babyface for a minute by helping Steve. And for the live audience and the commentators, they knew what story to tell. And yes, they were telling a completely different story on TV, but going into it, we all 100% knew Steve was going to be the babyface. The more heelish he was, the more he was over as a babyface to that audience. So no, we went in with our eyes open on that, but we were shooting for the backside of it. We went into it as a babyface match. We didn't try to steer anybody one way or another leading up to the match. We wanted the shock on the end, the handshake with Mr. McMahon and Mr. McMahon helping Austin out. But that live audience, they were like, yeah, fuck yeah. Vince has fucking finally seen the light. And that's just, it's a price you pay when you've got to get to the other side. And the other side, there were different ways to go that didn't pan out due to injuries. But no, we knew We knew going into the thing, and the decision was made what was going to take place afterwards, and we were committed to it. But we also knew the bumps in the road along the way.
Talk to me about when you guys made the decision for him to go heel.
God, December, because I remember just the going over it back and forth from like January on, and kind of the battles of Triple H being involved and just different things, and really wanting Triple H to turn babyface as well. It was an ongoing battle, because it wasn't just the original plan wasn't just Steve turning heel. It was to do the double switch right after that with Hunter, for Hunter to turn babyface. And that's why, the whole Undertaker thing and at WrestleMania, and he squashes Triple H. And then after the fact, instead they wanted to go on a 2-man wrecking crew through everybody. And it changed right afterwards. And it, in my opinion, didn't change for the better.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've sort of teased that before, but I think that's, that probably should have been the way it went. Meltzer would continue. Even months back, when the tease for the match began, a Rock interview where he started trash talking Austin saw the crowd turn on him briefly. By the final week, more due to tweaking of Rock's character, having him punk Austin out a few times on television and be nicer to new employees, the crowd was split in their reactions. But it was a foregone conclusion that wouldn't be the case at the beginning of the match in Houston. Every appearance on the screen of Rock was met with heavy boos, and Austin received thunderous cheers. Let me ask you this. How much of that do you think is them just cheering the hometown hero? More so than just the television character. They're pulling for the guy because, by God, he's from Texas.
A big part of it. And also, neither guy was a definitive heel, both baby faces going in. There is a probably larger segment of the audience. Man, they want to witness a title change. They want to witness history. They want to see, they want to see the underdog win, and whoever the challenger is, most times is the underdog.
Let's talk a little bit about, a bit of a change in policy that happens on this show as well. Chris Benoit is acknowledged as a former WCW champion who never lost the title. Paul Heyman is constantly referring to ECW championships that have never really been acknowledged before on the show. And you're even sort of paying homage to the past with the gimmick battle royal, which is something you maybe a few years prior wouldn't have done like this. I mean, obviously we know what's changed in terms of business, WCW and ECW being gone, but why did Vince loosen up on that?
Well, because we owned them now, and it wasn't acknowledging your competitor. We had them at this point, and it was just to try and change and acknowledge the past if it benefited the storyline.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. The WCW talent that you fly in, this was a fucking flop, was it not? You had Johnny Ace, Chavo Guerrero Jr., Mike Awesome, Lance Storm, Hugh Morris, Sean O'Hare, Mark Jindrak, Chuck Palumbo, Mike Sanders, Stacy Keibler, and Sean Stasiak. We see a bunch of these dudes in the box. I think a lot of people, myself included, are curious. Hey, now that they own WCW, what's going to happen here? I think a lot of us assume there would be something happen in the ring. You've already explained why that didn't happen, but then it's this group of guys. Fuck, why even bother? Is that wrong on me to say?
Well, no, I mean, how's it a flop? We showed them, and that's all it was ever meant to be. It was never meant to be anything more than that. And people don't, they always, you look at from the bigger picture, and they don't understand everything going on the business end of things. So people assume, they bought WCW, so Bill Goldberg's going to run in.
Well, no, I get that. But at the same time, if you're just going to show them and they're not going to do anything, I mean, was I supposed to be like, God damn, Chuck Palumbo's there? I wonder what he's going to do. Cause I didn't think that at all.
No, and we didn't expect anyone to think it. We're just saying, hey, there's a presence here. And it was a reminder without harping on it that Shane purchased WCW and these guys are here to support Shane tonight, watching, being a part of WrestleMania. That's all it was ever supposed to be. Nothing more.
Do you know why? Is this just the old in case shit? You guys told the talent, bring your gear and whatever championship belts you have. And specifically, we're talking about tag titles with Palumbo and O'Hare. They were all told to bring their gear and those belts. And then as it turns out, of course, they're never brought backstage to talk to any of the wrestlers. And by the time they return to the hotel, the WWF crew's already left. Chat me up though. Can you speak to, is this just the old, hey, if you're going to the building, even if you're not booked, you should just take your shit just in case?
Yes. And there was also an opportunity, if we had the opportunity then to shoot pictures with them, to get them on video and to do different things with them. That's it.
But the idea that that's happening at WrestleMania, you guys are so fucking busy with everything else. I wasn't there, but even I'm like, oh, they don't have time for that shit.
Yeah. But yeah, again, nowadays it's such a machine that they do. And even then it was something that had that come up that we might've been able to squeeze them in and do some stuff with them. But it was more than anything, be prepared and for whatever may take place because things change at the last minute.
I'm just going to tell you in hindsight, you can always sort of tell when something jumps the shark. Maybe you don't know when it happens, but the invasion jumped the shark at WrestleMania X-Seven. 6 days after you acquired it, it's fucking already over because the cutaway shot is of goddamn Mark Jindrak and Chuck Palumbo. It's not Goldberg or Flair or DDP or nope. It's fucking Chavo and Hugh Morris.
No, that's all that it was.
Why even bother?
Well, okay. If that's the case, then why bring in any of them over then? To that logic, then why would you take any talent? Then
no.
If we just done that, then we should have just bought the library and said, no, fuck all you talent. We don't want any of you and move on.
I think that would have gotten our hopes up a little less than the horse shit you gave us with the invasion.
Well, bummer. Again, go back to your guys that were overpaid, had contracts that were huge, that they weren't, again, they weren't willing to get out of or walk away from. They wanted to get paid. And I think if I was in the same situation, I would too.
Oh, we know you get paid.
It's a business decision where you just go, okay, we're making the best business decision for us.
Let's keep it rolling here. Meltzer would write, Chyna's career-ending neck injury, which was supposed to give her an Achilles heel and explain why she's now wrestling women, saw Chyna blow off the injury in an interview saying she was fine, and then sell almost nothing in her title win over Ivory, which was a one-sided squash. The only positive of which is that the fans see her as a star, and the bookers know to keep her ring time short. Chat me up here. Do you remember anything about this angle being dropped? Is this just one of those as the wind blows changes that we always read about in the Observer?
Well, I really don't know what you're referring to there. It was Chyna coming in and looking to do something different with Chyna. It was a logical extension with the right to censor and with Ivory, and it became a personal issue with Chyna. It was something that she hadn't done yet. She hadn't won the women's championship. So that was, okay, let's go there. And we went there.
Let's talk about some backstage news from around this time. Meltzer would write, there was a couple of minor talent issues that surfaced during the week leading up to the show. The complete card was made clear after SmackDown the prior Tuesday, which led a lot of the wrestlers who had been with the company on the road all year that weren't booked on the show at all, upset about not sharing in the biggest payday of the year. By the latter part of the week, the word was out that virtually every full-timer on the roster would have a part in the show in some form, except for a few on the bottom rung. Then the night before the show, the plans changed and virtually everyone off the show originally was off the show again, likely because they were already doing a 4-hour Mania and it wasn't good to add matches live to Heat. Several wrestlers were vocal. Among them was Steve Blackman. because he had always done his job and been on the road all year. And X-Pac, who until recently had always been kept as one of the main players on the squad. X-Pac said he was going to go to Triple H. And when Showtime came, many of the original people who were off the show were back on. So it does feel a little hokey pokey-ish. We've heard about this before. We talked about it last week with WrestleMania 10, where a big tag team match was scrapped in the middle of the show. What do you remember about this WrestleMania X-Seven card and how it changed a few times the week of to include or not include some, for lack of a better word, underneath guys?
Well, a lot of that just comes down to timing and too much show. So when you've got whatever you have, 3 hours and 55 minutes of showtime for the event, there's only so much you can put in. And it's funny, the same people that would complain that, oh, we didn't have so-and-so on the show are the same people that complain that X match didn't have enough time. And it's, you got to serve an awful lot of masters. And as you get into it and you get closer and guys are asking for more time and different things, it's a happy medium. You have to serve a lot of masters and you've got to make it work. It's a jigsaw puzzle putting all of that together. So sometimes shit goes away. Then you come back and guys say, oh, well, you can take 10 minutes off my match or 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Well, fuck, now we have more time to put, maybe we can put more shit on here. Again, it's living and breathing and constantly changing and constantly moving.
Of the guys on the main roster who were not on the show, you got Rikishi, who's out with a busted eardrum, Scotty 2 Hotty, who had a neck injury, Tori from Tough Enough, Billy Gunn, Al Snow, all Tough Enough, K Quick, who we know is R-Truth now, Crash, Molly Holly, Bob Holly, who's also out with an injury. Big Boss Man's not here because his new gimmick supposedly hasn't been introduced yet. Lowdown, Kai and Ty, S.A. Rios, and Terry. So there are some folks who aren't on the show, but I don't know what you would have done with them.
That's the point. And yeah, you could have done an 8-man tag there with some of those guys. Who would have cared? And I don't think that other than them, yes, it's a big moment to be a part of WrestleMania and I get it, but I also feel that there's a place and there's a time and a place for everything. And some things, unfortunately, not everybody gets to go to the big dance. That's, it's unfortunate, but that's just life.
Could have put them in that box with all those WCW guys.
Sure.
Just give everybody knives, put them in that box, tell them whoever fights their way out. You know.
I know you put $5,000 on the hood of a car and anyway.
All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about the open of the show. What a fucking awesome opening video package this is. The voiceover here, is that Freddie Blassie?
Yes.
These packages historically at Open WrestleMania are always amazing. We've talked about them the last few weeks. Do you remember who did this one? Is this David Sahadi? Feels like it should have been.
It was either, I don't even know if Sahadi was there at that time. If it wasn't Sahadi, it was Adam Panucci.
Well, whoever it was, tip of the cap to you.
God damn is good.
We've previously discussed why King isn't here. How nervous were you about putting Paul Heyman in that spot here for WrestleMania?
Really not at all, because Paul and JR had worked previously in WCW. They had good chemistry and Paul knew the stories. Paul knew the stories better than Lawler did. Paul was up on it and listening to it, as I said in the very beginning, Paul added an awful lot to this show and fuck, he was on his game here, not over the top, just telling great stories and getting talent over.
Was there ever any discussion to trying to get a WCW announcer here? I mean, a Tony Schiavone or a Mike Tenay or any of those guys, since you've got their contracts now too?
No.
Okay.
I don't think we had their contracts. They weren't people that we absorbed.
Yeah, but had to get Columbo. All right. Chris Jericho is in your first match. He's working with William Regal. They're going to go 7 minutes and 8 seconds. It only got 2 stars, but Jericho gets the win when he earns a pinfall and retains his Intercontinental title. Meltzer will say match was fine. In some ways, well wrestled by Regal, although Jericho had one of those matches where he was slightly off on things. Where it ended up disappointing is that it was just too short. What'd you think of the match? I actually dug it. These are 2 of my favorites though. So I think I would be entertained by nearly anything they put out.
I thought it was an excellent opener, and it set the stage. They went out and they wrestled a solid match. Probably because it was in the wrong dome, maybe why he didn't like it, but it was solid. It was stiff, and they put on a hell of a show. And it was a great story leading up to it with Jericho and Regal kind of going back and forth, but I found it highly entertaining.
Let's keep it rolling here and let's talk about the next match. Well, I guess we should touch base on, and I know we've talked about this for sure with Regal. The way they built this program is the PT segment, which is one of your favorite segments. Refresh everybody's memory about what the hot issue here with Jericho and Regal was.
Well, not PT, but the P in the T. For a minute, I had to go PT. Jericho urinated in William Regal's afternoon tea, and Regal drank it and felt it had a little twang to it. So that was one of the many things leading up to this, but it was 2 guys that could talk and 2 guys that could wrestle that really delivered in the match. And it was a great way to start off the night.
It was indeed. And, next up was a backstage vignette that you really enjoyed.
Well, yeah, you got APA and Jackie and Ron Simmons there, which just kind of set the stage for what was to come next. But going back and watching this was like, holy shit. Bradshaw was actually ripped, and John getting into character kind of set the stage, talking about Texas and the Astrodome and all the things that had taken place. But it was a way to even get that Texas crowd all that much more behind APA and Jackie as we go into the next one.
The next one is Bradshaw and Farouk teaming with Taz with 2 Z's to beat Godfather, Bull Buchanan, and Val Venus. You know, I'm going to take a time out here to find out exactly how you guys were able to skirt around trademark or copyright law or whatever and say that no, Taz with 2 Z's is definitely different than Taz with 1 Z.
It's got 2 Z's. You have no idea how many times I tried to convince Taz to get an extra Z put on his little tattoo on his arm. I said, it'd really be good if you would just commit to this gimmick and get an extra Z on your arm. Never did. No, I mean, the same way that ECW got away with calling him Taz all those years, just in general.
Well, but in fairness, they called him Taz, and you would always say, in front of 1,200 people in a bingo hall. And now,
right,
this is a worldwide enterprise known for its licensing agreements globally. And you somehow argue, at least enough to do it, that 1 Z makes it different.
Right. That's because it does.
I mean, technically,
he was Taz.
Technically, if Impact had rolled out an Underfaker character, I mean, would they have gotten away with it? Cause that's different. It's not a T, it's an F. They made a loop on the T. There's a
yeah,
loop.
but it's still, if they portrayed it as the same character.
Oh no,
we didn't say that Taz was in any way related to anything else. That was just a name.
No, I get it. But like this Underfaker character, he could have been like an insurance salesman, just nothing. I mean, he's not like he's not here for your soul.
That's for lawyers to deal with.
Yeah.
I just want Taz to get an extra Z on his arm.
The match ends abruptly here when the Good Father, it's not the Godfather, but he's actually the Good Father here, misses a tackle into the buckles, and Bradshaw pins him with that clothesline from hell. Nothing to the match, half a star, in and out, 3 minutes, 53 seconds. But hey, you got everybody on the show. Anything else you want to mention about this one?
It was an ugly, ugly brawl, but thankfully kept very brief.
Bradshaw really had the standout moment backstage and here in the match. He gets the win. Did you have Any sort of plans or ambition for him to be a single star yet at this point here in 01?
Kind of. And this was during a time that Vince felt that both of those guys would do better on their own singly. But the more that we would try to go in that direction, a lot of times, the more we'd shift back, and people wanted that APA tag team all that much more. So it was, yes, to answer your question, yeah, this was the beginning of these guys could be great singles, and it's time to move them from the tag team. It just didn't pull that trigger for quite a while.
You want to talk about anything else backstage? You want to get to the next match?
Well, the next deal backstage had Trish wheeling Linda down the hall where she was in a comatose stage, and just, watching it then as they ran into Stephanie McMahon backstage was, I've done it, just trying to focus on one thing. And Linda McMahon's performance throughout all of this was really great, just to try and keep a straight face and try and focus and not watch all the different shit and react to a lot of the stuff that was going on. And to me, that was underrated. Just going back and watching that and going, all right, that was interesting.
Well, I didn't know how you would classify Linda and Trish in this segment, so I'm glad we at least got you to talk about it a little bit. Let's get to Kane winning the hardcore title over Raven and Big Show, 9 minutes, 18 seconds. No Pete Rose this time at WrestleMania in the Kane match. And they try to do something different here, to say the least. They're brawling all the way through the back. They've got these, it looks like you guys built some rooms for them just to tear down and go through the glass window and go through the wall. I mean, people are running into each other with golf carts. It's pretty crazy, but it is fun. I mean, I have to give it props for that. It only got a star and 3/4. I thought it was much more fun than that. What'd you think?
Well, a little too much backstage for me. And it's funny. You say, oh, you people built rooms and shit backstage. Again, that goes to the rumor and innuendo, because there was a wall built in rooms that were already there. And the fact that we went through a wall that they weren't supposed to go through, and people just assume that they assume everything's gimmick because a few things are gimmicked. And that's why I just have to chuckle sometimes, because
well, no one said that. I just made that up, but just watching it, it feels like, boy, if someone actually paid a contractor for that, somebody needs to call their mama.
Yeah. No, the outside wall in the room was there, and then we utilized, the gimmick glass and built a gimmick wall in there. But it was, one of those walls took a hell of a beating from, I think, Big Show or Kane, one of the two. And then when Raven got on the damn golf cart with Big Show, and it just was, I guess, too much weight, and ran off and went into the damn thing. There was supposed to be a little chase there, with Kane getting on the golf court and chasing Raven and Show backstage to that area a little bit. And they had to quickly change plans up a little bit and fight to where they needed to get to. But that was, I remember it when it happened, going, oh shit, hoping everybody was okay, because that damn thing could have gone off the edge. But it was good. It was fun. It was a hardcore match. I wish more of it would have taken place in front of the audience, but I also understand why we did what we did, and it accomplished what it set out to accomplish.
I enjoyed it. It's a sleeper match here on the show. Go check it out. Sort of silly, sort of fun. The golf cart chase was maybe the part that people sort of poke fun at. Going through the window, though, something everybody still talks about. You want to talk about the backstage stuff, or just get to the next match?
Well, no, the backstage stuff was good shit, and it was good for what it was, and made it all work. And then from that, going back to Kurt Angle watching over and over Chris Benoit making him tap out in a match and asking Edge and Christian, if you tap out when the referee isn't there, does that really count as a tap out? It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, but no one's there to hear it, doesn't make any noise. And just seeing Edge and Christian back in that old character, and Kurt with hair. It's the other thing in this show that was kind of interesting. Big Show with hair, Kurt with hair, Rock with hair. Everybody was so young. That kind of blew me away a little bit.
Well, Eddie Guerrero here is going to pin Test to win the European title, 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Perry Saturn comes out with Guerrero, and interesting look here, to say the least. Huge size difference between these two guys. They managed to get 2.25 stars out. Malenko comes out, distracts the ref while Guerrero gets the title belt, hits Test with it, gets the pin. I thought it was okay. I mean, better than probably you expected a Test match to be, but it does feel like, if you could do it over again, you'd do something different with Eddie here. What'd you think?
Well, it was the best test match he ever had. And every time that I watch Eddie, it just reminds me of how fucking good he really was, because Eddie got everything that he could out of Test, and there was a size differential, but Eddie made you believe throughout that entire match that he belonged in it and that he could beat this big bastard anytime he wanted. It was what it was, but it was the best match I think Test has ever had in his life. And Perry Saturn with his Hulk Hogan mustache and hat was interesting to say the least at first. At first I didn't even know who the hell it was when he came down.
Yeah, it is a little weird. But it's cool to see Eddie here on a WrestleMania. Let's get to the next match. And this is probably one of the matches that people remember the most. It gets 4.25 stars, two of the all-time greats, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. They're given 14 minutes and 2 seconds. Angle is doing his best to insult this Texas crowd to make sure Benoit is clearly the babyface. I thought the match was really, really good. And I do think maybe, the ref bump was unnecessary, if we're trying to be critical of something that was already pretty good. What'd you think of the match here?
I thought it was excellent. They told a great story all the way through the damn thing, and the story building up to it was well told as well. Benoit and Angle had tremendous chemistry, and they knew how, even if they would start off slow in a match, they would have the audience by the end and for the finish. So the psychology in their matches always got the audience, and it made people believe. And if you weren't a believer, you watch that match, you sure as fuck were a believer at the end of the match. And it was just a great told story. Everybody did good coming out of that. But you go right from that to what Brian Gewirtz would probably say was the highlight of the show, was something that he had wanted to do so bad. And we did it. And watching it back, I laughed out loud when you go back and you see Kamala standing on William Regal's desk, just slapping his belly. And Regal coming in to see that, and Kim Chi and everybody there. It was a fun, classic little break to get to the interview in the back with Angle and Benoit attacking Angle, and to make Angle tap out as he said he would, and he made him tap out on the interview set. So it was that story continuing and let you know this ain't over yet, folks.
I really enjoy the finish, where Angle goes for the moonsault, Benoit gets the knees up, but it nails Angle in the face. And then Benoit uses the diving headbutt, but none of that is what matters. You get a pin out of nowhere using the tights. After a match like this hard hitting, any injuries to speak of? Because some of this stuff looked pretty snug.
An injury to the Cyborg? No. Kurt's kind of hard to injure. I mean, he can get injured, and yes, he has been, but during this time, he was a machine, and you could smash him in the face with a bulldozer and he would just keep going. So he was an animal.
This is both of their second WrestleMania. Of course, they both were at WrestleMania 2000 and they were in a 3-way against Chris Jericho. And now they're back here in a singles match. What'd you think and how would you compare the two? I know you normally don't like 3-ways. Jericho obviously added something different to the match, but it is, basically the same match with or without Jericho. How would you compare and contrast them? And did this match make an impression on Vince? Because it does feel like both of these guys are going to start to get a pretty major push coming out of this.
Yes, to both of those. And I think that this match was better because it was a single match and it just amplified the skills of both guys and how well they worked together and the believability of every single thing that they did in the ring. So to that, it made people notice and see that on this platform and exposure to this many people, they took it and they ran with it and made the very most of it.
Well, it was a great match. Go out of your way to watch it, especially if you haven't seen it in a long time, probably ahead of its time. I think a lot of guys who we see on the main roster today would probably look at a match like this as inspiration, but maybe the next match, not so much. Chyna wins the women's title from Ivory in 2 minutes and 39 seconds. The commentary would be Chyna has dropped a lot of weight, slimming down, but also dropping a lot of muscle mass to try and give her a more mainstream look. Match was terrible because it was a total ego show. Chyna blew off the injury angle. Ivory hit her with a belt shot at the bell, but she made a quick comeback and it was a one-sided squash. Chyna gave her a power bomb and then lifted her up at 2, then gave her a press slam and pinned her just by laying backwards like it was a piece of cake, showing no respect at all. -1 star. What'd you think of Chyna's look here and the commentary on it? And more importantly, the match and the criticism that it was really disrespectful and squash match.
Well, I don't think it was disrespectful at all. It was a squash match and it was meant to be a squash match. It was booked to be that way. As far as Chyna's look, she looked a lot softer. And when I say softer, her overall look, she looked, I guess, more feminine, but it was probably, in my opinion, her best look. And her coming out of this time, it was like, all right, she looked more feminine and it was meant to be a squash match. It was meant for her to go out and destroy Ivory and to be the new women's champion. That's what it was designed to do. And that's exactly what it did.
Oh my goodness. Next up, we've got a baseball segment here. A couple of Astros are interviewed at ringside and, Bagwell says something like, wrestlers are great actors. What the fuck did Vince think of that line?
God, that's why I hate putting a live microphone in front of douchebags. So for all my Houston Astros fans out there, fuck Bagwell. Bagwell is an asshole.
Well, let's hear about the Bagwell hate. And for once, we're not talking about
the Houston
Bagwell
people know
hate.
Bagwell's a douchebag.
We're not talking about Buff. We're talking about Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff Bagwell is an asshole?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know. Speaking of assholes, Shane McMahon pinned Vince McMahon in a street fight in 14 minutes and 12 seconds. Shane, of course, comes out and points out the WCW talent in the building before the match. And then Stephanie comes out with Vince and slaps Shane. And Shane gets a kendo stick and starts hitting his father. And eventually Vince potatoes Shane to the point that he starts to get a mouse around his eye. And the commentary would be Vince isn't a well-trained worker physically and that his stuff looks bad, but he knows how to play a crowd and is willing to get hit. Of course, the big spot was Shane coming off the top rope through the Spanish announcer's table when Vince was pulled to safety by Stephanie. And then of course, Trish wheels out Linda for the big spot. Trish slaps Vince and then, Stephanie and Trish brawl to the back. Linda, through all of this, supposedly doped up. Vince calls her a bitch and pulls her out of the wheelchair, puts her in a chair in the corner, keeps verbally abusing her. Eventually, though, you know what happens. Referee Mick Foley stops him from abusing Linda, and then Vince grabs a garbage can to hit Shane, and then Linda just stands up, gives Vince a low blow, and Shane puts the garbage can in front of his face and does the Van Terminator all the way across the ring. into the face for the pin. It gets 3 stars. And this comatose Linda thing is finally paid off. Trish finally got her comeuppance. Vince McMahon got hit in the balls, and Shane got to jump off shit and then kick a trash can into his dad's head. This is the McMahon family in a match, is it not?
Yeah, it was. It was the culmination of a story, long arcing story, getting to this big blow off. Watching it back, I literally got goosebumps when Linda stood up and Shane did the point to turn around, Dad. And Linda got the shot in on Vince, kicking him in the nuts. And then we went home from there. It was an uncomfortable story leading into it and getting into it. And when you're in that creative process, this is the other thing people don't understand sometimes is they're playing characters on TV, but the characters they're playing on TV are based on, real life human beings. The names aren't changed or anything. Yes, they're characters and they're embellished quite a bit to be that evil character. But still, sometimes it can be uncomfortable when you're going through a lot of the machinations and suggestions for some of these things. You have to remove yourself and only look at the character. And that's one thing that Vince has been able to do, where when it's on the air, where he'll go, okay, this is a character, and what would that character do? What would they do in this situation? And the match was highly entertaining. They beat the living shit out of each other, and the payoff was the right one, and it got a huge pop from everybody there. So, in my opinion, it was one of the high spots of the night.
I don't think that we can overstate how fucking loud this crowd got when Linda just stood up.
I know.
I mean, it really is unbelievable, in this era where everybody's doing one more majestic, crazy, high risk spot after another. I mean, they're awesome. I'm not arguing that at all, but these guys managed to get over standing up. It's unbelievable that was as over as it was, and tells you how invested the crowd was in that story. So even though, I'm the world's worst at being critical of all the McMahon storylines, this one had a big payoff. All right, here we go. The match that everybody really remembers from this show, and probably one of the most iconic matches in history.
No. The gimmick battle royal's not yet, Conrad.
Fuck off. Edge and Christian regain the world tag team titles in a 3-way tables, ladders, and chairs, oh my, match over the Dudleys and the Hardy Boys. I don't even know that words can describe this. It got 4 3/4. Fuck that. It was 5 stars. I've never seen anything like this before. Even my casual lapsed fans in my life, people who aren't, people who watch regularly or even could name 10 wrestlers today, they remember this match. This is something else. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, or maybe you've never seen it, get out from under your rock and go watch it this week. It's just crazy. The bumps that these guys take, we can't possibly describe it. I mean, the spear from that Edge did on the ladder was a highlight spot in the open and every sort of video package. I don't know, for a decade, maybe longer, but then just falling as far as they did through the tables with Jeff Hardy and, Bubba just crashing into the aisle. Just so many crazy over the top. How are they doing this? How is no one dead? A lot of people still are, wearing the scars and injuries on their body to this day from this, but man, it stands the test of time. Unbelievable. I can't put it over enough. It's your turn.
In my notes, I actually wrote no words.
Yeah.
You sit there and watch this in awe at the athleticism, the danger, the skill, but the match still made sense, as crazy as all that is. And they put their bodies through so much punishment. It was unbelievable. And at the end of it, for them to get up and walk away from that was a miracle in and of itself. But, you know, like you say, the edge spear off the ladder with Jeff Hardy hanging on to the rung in the middle of the ring, hanging from it, trying to grab the belts, and Edge jumping from one ladder to the middle of the ring to spear Jeff Hardy. Insane. The 4-table bump on the outside with, like I said, Bubba going through it. Every single person in that match came to steal the show. That, in my opinion, that was their goal, to go out there that night, steal the show, and have everybody talking about them. And I think that they accomplished it. Phenomenal match, just phenomenal story with so many false finishes back and forth. Hardy's, Dudley's, Edge and Christian, just off the chart. Kudos.
It's something, I mean, I don't even know how to describe this. You were there live. Were you on headsets for the show? Where were you watching this show?
Oh my God, man. I'm warming up for my big match. I don't have time for this shit. I got to get ready I had a gigantic battle royal that I was entered in, Conrad, with prize money and undisclosed prize money that, trust me, was worth fighting for, Pally.
What's the reaction backstage to these guys laying it all on the line in this TLC?
Seriously, just it was standing ovation and thankful that they were all able to walk out, because those are scary, man. I don't care who you are, how well trained you are, how tough you are. Those bumps, every single bump was putting their career on the line in so many ways. And they wanted to make it that special, and they did. They definitely delivered.
It's unbelievable. Go out of your way to watch it. Next up, maybe not the same. It got a dud, but it was fun for what it was. It was
a dud.
3 minutes, 5 seconds, a very short old timers battle royal that we're calling the gimmick battle royal. All the intros are pretty campy. Commentary is two of the greatest of all time. Mean Gene Okerlund, Bobby the Brain Heenan. And, originally Gilbert, this is according to the rumor and innuendo, was supposed to be in this battle royal, but he's pulled from the show because they're concerned a Goldberg chant may come out, and they didn't really want that yet, especially on the heels of them purchasing WCW. Do you remember that? Did you guys?
No, I don't. The only one that I remember that we asked to be in it that did not want to be in it was the Red Rooster. Other than that, I think everybody was, and I don't remember Gilbert ever being in it. He may have been. I just don't remember.
Let's keep it rolling here. The guys who are in it are the Bushwhackers, Duke the Dumpster Drosay, Earthquake, the Goon, Doink the Clown. Who played Doink here?
Ray Apollo.
Kamala, Kimchi, Repo Man, Jim Cornette, Nikolai Volkov, the Freebird, Michael Hayes, One Man Gang, who it would be written here, came as gang because he had lost too much weight to wear the Akeem outfit. It didn't fit anymore. Gobbledygooker, Tugboat, Hillbilly Jim, Brother Love, and Sergeant Slaughter.
And the biggest pop of the night on entrances was probably Michael Hayes.
That's what I was going to say. Quote, a lot of the wrestlers got no reaction, which isn't a surprise because many of them in their heyday also got no reaction. He's shitting on guys. Bushwhackers as cult favorites, Hayes, who was big in Texas, Love, who's from Houston, and Jim Cornette, more because of having catchy entrance music, all got nice reactions. Of course, once the bell rings, everybody's bailing out like it's the fucking Titanic, except for the Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik wins 3 minutes and 5 seconds. What do you remember about how this came to be? Whose idea was it? Who else did you pitch? Any sort of feedback you can give us about this? Cause we get questions about it all the time.
Well, it was an idea of trying to incorporate some of the past gimmicks and how could we incorporate it. Somebody came up with the idea. It may have actually been Brian who came up with the idea of let's put them all in a match. And the working name was a gimmick battle royal. So that became the fucking name of it, the gimmick battle royal, with all the gimmicky gimmicks from the past. So we started reaching out to guys. I was not reached out to. I was told I was going to be in it and didn't really want to. But then after a while, I was like, hell yeah, this could be fun. And like I said, the only one that I remember, and there may have been more, but I remember Red Rooster was invited to be a part of it, and he didn't want to be a part of it. So that was the only one I really remember not. But these were guys just going back and looking at old timers that could still walk. So Sheik was questionable, but guys that would still be able to take a bump over the top rope. And again, probably the reason Sheik won is because he wasn't going to be able to take a bump over the top rope. And it just became a fun little project to go out and do, and getting everybody together. I think that the guys that were a part of it were just so happy to be there and to be on the show and be a part of it, that it was pretty easy to lay out. And, you know, Pat Patterson got with everybody and laid the thing out fairly simply. And we went out and had us an old fashioned battle royal, which I should have won. I felt, you know, being in my hometown, I probably should have gone over.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, if it were a shoot, I am a 3-time black belt Hall of Famer.
Well, if Cornette had a baseball. All right. So Undertaker,
he had a fucking tennis racket.
He'd whooped your ass with it.
Yeah, that's why I lasted damn near till the end.
Next up, Undertaker and Triple H, which almost sounds like a match from this year's WrestleMania. It still happened back in 2001. They go 18 minutes and 17 seconds. Pretty cool entrance for Triple H. Motorhead displayed him to the ring. Of course, Meltzer really burying Lemmy here, saying he doesn't even know his own words to his song. But
what the fuck? Bullshit. He was fucking great.
I thought it was a great entrance. Really enjoyed it. There is a notable thing that happened in this match, though. Years later, Triple H has said this is the only time he used a fake sledgehammer, and the fake one winds up hurting the Undertaker, which is kind of ironic. And there is a weird spot here where you guys are doing a big bump from like a camera platform. Is that the right word, or what do you guys call that?
It was from the tech platform and the hard camera section.
So they do this big bump over the top, and they show a replay in an angle where you can sort of see that it's gimmicked. I mean, you see the, as you would say, the magic. Any heat on the director or the cameraman, or, I mean, that's clearly not something Vince wants airing.
No. And it was a poorly timed and poorly chosen shot, but it was the way that it was all laid out originally. No, they weren't supposed to take that shot, and they got caught. So it was what it was, but I don't think it took away from the match. The match itself was a good match. It told a good story. Again, it was much like the hardcore match earlier in the night. I'm not a big fan of things taking place not in the ring or where the majority of the audience can see it.
You're right.
And maybe that's because I'm a live event guy, and that I always think of the fan in the arena. And if they can't see it to react to it, now for television purposes, you can cover it 9 ways from Sunday. Sometimes too good. But for me, I'm just not a big fan of that unless it's in a place where everybody can see it. And the attempt was to get it up there where everybody could see it on the hard camera platform, but still in that setup, there's still a large percentage of the crowd that can't see it live, and you're looking at screens and everything. I think that just takes away a little bit of it, but the story was told, and I thought they had a hell of a match, and it was, you know, a tough position to be in to have to follow that gimmick battle royal. But you know, they did all right here.
I do want to talk about that weird spot a little bit because Meltzer covered it. They brawl into this camera pit, and Undertaker chokeslammed Triple H over the pit onto this gimmick gymnastics pit. This was so stupid because the camera just showed this unbelievable sight of Triple H going over this railing, disappearing into thin air as Ross talked about a big drop on the concrete, and they showed more replays of the same thing. Then they killed it with the final replay, actually showing us landing onto a gimmicked foam rubber pit, which basically turned the match from serious to comedy and making Ross look bad at trying to sell it as devastating. Then Undertaker, like a young kid at a jungle gym, did an elbow drop into the pit, making it even sillier since you could see the foam protect his fall. Even sillier, the EMTs came out for Triple H and Undertaker attacked him. By the time they got back in the ring, it was nearly 14 minutes into the match. And Undertaker gets the sledgehammer, teases using it. Triple H does the low blow. They trode punches. Undertaker uses the tombstone, no ref. So he sets up the last rod power bomb. Triple H hits him with the sledgehammer and potatoes him, busting him up. And then Undertaker quickly comes back and wins with a last rod power bomb, 3.5 stars. And that spot that busted open Undertaker is with a gimmicked sledgehammer. That's amazing to me that of all the times it was the real one, everybody, I guess, knew to be safe, and maybe they just thought we can throw caution to the wind since it's gimmicked, and that's the one that fucking hurts him.
Well, the only part about it was gimmicked is the head. The wood and all that shit. Everything else about it is real. So
goddamn, I really wish Blue Chew was a sponsor this week.
No shit,
fucking nailed it, and I can't even say it. Bastards.
I know.
All right,
but it was just kind of, it was one of those freak accidents that happens sometimes. And of course, as usual, Meltzer's wrong because you couldn't tell it was a crash pad until Undertaker did the elbow drop and they took the shot of the impact. That was the only time you could really tell that it was. And then after that, nothing else mattered, because then it was blatant. But the initial bump and the initial shots, you couldn't really tell until they followed Undertaker all the way down and went, oh, fuck. So it is what it is. Shit happens sometimes.
That tickled me. The head was gimmicked, but the wood was real. All right. Let's
well, sometimes. Well, I'm not.
All
anyway.
right. Next up, the longest main event ever. Steve Austin wins the WWF title from The Rock, 28 minutes and 6 seconds. Hot pace early, Meltzer would say. The vast majority of the crowd cheered Austin. Couldn't hear any boos for Austin, even when he did the full-fledged turn. This is, it's weird because Rock hits a stunner for a near fall and Vince comes out, and then Austin hits Rock's spine buster for a near fall, and Rock comes back with a spine buster and people's elbow. And then McMahon breaks up the pin with a save. And then Rock goes after Vince, but Austin gives him the rock bottom, and Austin uses a low blow, and he holds Rock for McMahon to hit him with a chair. And even at this point, the crowd is refusing to turn on Austin, even though the belief going into this had to be that the hate on the McMahon character is so strong, especially this night, given what we just saw with Linda, that this will surely turn Austin. But it doesn't to the live crowd. They go back and forth. And then eventually Austin just goes berserk and hits the Rock, 15, 20 times all over his body, and then scores the pin. And then Austin and McMahon shake hands and drink beer, and that's the end. It got 4.5 stars in the Observer. And here comes the hate. I fucking hated it. I hate the finish. I think it ruined it. I love the hype for this. I love the build for it. The promos they're doing ahead of time, the video, it's all outstanding. But when Vince came out, to me, the whole thing took a shit. Your turn.
I loved it. And it had to be the first step to get where we were trying to go with Austin. Misstep, hindsight being 2020. But at the time you had to do it. You had to get there on the biggest stage of them all to set the stage for the rest of the summer and where we wanted to go. Looking, when you look back on it, that Texas crowd, and the more Steve was a heel, the more people loved him. That's what made Steve a babyface. His heel tendencies, everything that he did was heelish. So we were trying to do something different, but I still don't think it took away from the match. And I think that the match overall was excellent and told you that story. Because if you remember going into it, Austin's promos were, I have to win and I will do whatever it takes to get that title back. And that was the underlying premise leading up to it, that Steve was desperate and willing to do whatever it takes to win that championship back. And that meant he made a deal with the devil. And he was willing to do whatever it took. And if that meant getting in cahoots with Mr. McMahon, then he would even do that to get the championship. So that story I thought was told really well when you look at it in totality leading up to it. Steve was just, man, Stone Cold Steve Austin was so fucking over that no matter what you did or to who, they were going to love it because it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I don't know what you could do to change that. We tried a lot of different things, and he's one of those characters that is genuine, that they feel that whatever guy you have out there, that's him. There's nothing put on, and I believe in that guy. So if he's doing it, then it must be right.
In your opinion, would this have worked better? I'm not going to say worked. Would it have worked better if they weren't in Texas when they tried to turn Steve?
That's a tough one. It probably would have worked better somewhere else. Like, for example, if you had done that same thing
in Toronto,
Toronto,
let's flip flop. Let's put them in Montreal, and then let's put 17 in Montreal, and then let's put 18 here in Houston. If this was in Montreal, it would have been easier to turn him, right?
I think so. Yes.
Do you think the size of the building hurts it too? And what I mean is, I know that Austin always talks about how much he enjoyed wrestling in Chicago because at the Rosemont Horizon or Allstate Arena now, it's got those wood ceilings. So the sound sort of reverberates down and it gets really, really loud in there. Whereas here in a big dome, maybe there is a bit of a delay. The sound isn't exactly the same. It escapes up a little more, which is what we hear about for big stadium shows outdoors. Do you think being so far away, people already sort of have a they've been preconditioned, hey, Austin's the good guy. And so the little nuances maybe don't resonate the same. Does that make sense?
I don't know if the building is different for the audience. It's definitely different for the performers sometimes. But this was a hometown crowd, man. They came to see their guy. Plus Steve was the challenger. They wanted their guy to win. They wanted to see a title change, and they were behind him 100%. So I think if it were to be held, as you say, in Montreal or even Toronto or something like that, I think that they would have been a lot more receptive to booing Mr. McMahon and the alliance with Steve. I think they would have gone, what the hell? But I don't know. Steve's character was one of those that no matter what he did, they still got behind him. He was a tough one to turn heel.
In hindsight, Austin has said that he had, really basically two regrets in his run with the WWF. Well, the major ones were walking out in 2002, but then turning heel here. And I think he's right. Do you think when you look back, hindsight being what it is, what would you have done differently?
Not had the babyface match. And what I mean by that is I would have had
him wrestle somebody else.
Well, no, not wrestle somebody else. I'm saying that I would have had Rock go in as a Stone Cold heel, pardon the pun, or turn Steve ahead of it and done something different with Steve before you got there, just so that the audience had a definitive good guy and a bad guy. Here they were split, and you watch the match, man. They were cheering for Rock just as much as they were cheering for Steve. Steve more, but there were pops for Rock, man, and they were behind him on the spots. The false finishes were all there. But if you had turned, we were dead set on going with Steve. If we had turned him at the Royal Rumble and done some dastardly things getting to that point, but even then, if he was the challenger, I don't know how that's going to feel. However, if Rock as the champion were a heel going into it, you'd have blown the roof off the place. And they blew the roof off the place anyway when Steve won.
Business starts to take a little bit of a dip. And I got to think that a portion of the audience, when Stone Cold became a bad guy, lost interest. And I know that, Michael Hayes used to say, when you get hot, that's when you leave. The idea being you want to always be able to come back. And that's a more territorial way of thinking where, you never want to stay until you're just not a draw anymore. That way you got somewhere to come back to. But here, do you think he left money on the table? And do you think Steve thinks he left money on the table by turning heel here?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Because I think that Steve winning the title, Rock going away, it's almost don't fix what's not broken, but we wanted to do something new and we wanted to try something. And Steve was adamant going into it about wanting to be a heel. And we all bought into it. But again, when you look back rose-colored glasses, 20/20 vision, don't know if we'd make that same decision.
All right, let's talk about it. A lot of people say this is the best WrestleMania ever. I'm saying, You say?
I say it is. I say from my experience and going back, there's WrestleMania 3 and then there's this one. And
to me, this finish messes it up for me. I can't enjoy it the same way. I wish I could. I mean, I remember where I watched this one. I remember exactly where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. It's a memorable show, but the main event, it's just like, oh man, it's not what I was hoping for.
And that's fair. I mean, that's fair looking at it, from a fan point of view. I can definitely see that sentiment. Looking at it as an attraction and looking at it as far as the quality of the matches up and down overall, were they all 42 stars or whatever in Tokyo Dome? No, but it had a great start, great middle, and a great finish. So, to me, I think it delivered, and for me, of the WrestleManias I was involved in, is the best.
What do you think about this, box of gimmicks battle royal, for lack of a better word? Do you think y'all will ever do that again?
I don't know. I thought it was fun. It could happen. It could definitely happen. I don't know who the gimmicks have been toned down since 2000s, and the only gimmicks that are left are even older than the ones that were in that one. So it's scary. Let me think. I think I might have been the youngest person in the ring.
I mean,
that's scary.
Duke Dressay is older than you?
Okay, Duke, maybe.
The Goon is older than you?
Yeah. Yeah, Barney's older than me.
Duke is only 50, so yeah, you're way older than him. All right, so let's talk about why this was such a big show. The figure 67,925 fans would rank 7th on the all-time recorded list at that point. Obviously, the North Korea shows were gigantic. WrestleMania 3 was bigger. SummerSlam at Wembley was bigger. There was a Tokyo Dome show in 98. That show in Toronto in 86 with Paul Orndorff and Hulk Hogan. WrestleMania 6 was another big one. I think that was like 67, 678. And so you barely beat that one here. But of course, everybody argues about attendance. We'll move along. The paid attendance is 62,886, which is gigantic. and trails only WrestleMania 3 as far as highest number of paid attendees for a wrestling show in North America. So just tremendous attendance. And the gate translates as well. It's $3,530,905, which is the largest in history outside of Japan. I mean, just unbelievable, really. The WWF record at the WrestleMania 6 Hogan Warrior in Toronto was 3.49 US. So you beat that one too. WrestleMania 5 was only 1.6. And I think most people remember WrestleMania 5 set a lot of records with Hogan and Savage on top. The merchandise, though, is one of the real stories. It set a record that doubled the company record and the North American record. $540,000 worth of swag was sold at WrestleMania 3. They did 1.1 million here. So nearly double. It's unbelievable when you really think about how much merch that is. The per head figure for this show is $17.67, which is the second highest figure average per head, since the last WrestleMania in Anaheim, which was WrestleMania 2000. The all-time record for WrestleMania pay-per-view buys was in 2000, 824,000 buys, but they're going to beat that here too. I can't believe this is a real thing. But you guys go from 800,000 some odd buys for the first time ever. You break 1 million, you do 1,040,000 buys, a record. You know, we talk about WrestleMania 5 being, you know, the former benchmark. That was 767. WrestleMania 15 was 800,000. WrestleMania 2000 was 824. WrestleMania X-Seven is 1,040,000. You wouldn't break that again until WrestleMania 21, which is just fucking bananas that you were able to get that many buys. And as a result, it sets a revenue record. I mean, even when Meltzer is trying to predict what the gate would be, I mean, what the total take would be, he ran the scenario at 800,000 buys. And again, it did over 1 million, but at 800,000 buys, he guessed the gross would be $36.6 million. And that's with only 800,000 buys. There's another 200,000 that he didn't even throw in the estimate here. Is that right? Is this the biggest WrestleMania ever by a huge margin?
Yeah, as far as drawing goes. And it was also the first time that we really were able to calculate all of the impact that we had, much like you read about the economic impact that Super Bowl and NBA bring into a town with their specials. That's what we were doing at this point. We were looking at, we would spend a week there. Well, how much impact did we have on the restaurants and on hotels and everything in the city? So when you look at all that, then you look at the revenue brought in from that, because we had access and all these different events taking place the week of, that it was probably the most profitable WrestleMania in history at that point.
Without question. And the fans loved it just as much as you did. According to the Wrestling Observer reader poll, it got 99% thumbs up, 1% thumbs down. The best match, it was a runaway in the reader poll. It was Austin Rock. Second place was the TLC match. Third was Angle and Benoit. The worst match, and it was a runaway, was China and Ivory. Do you agree with the way that ranks? You would put Austin Rock 1, TLC 2, and then Angle Benoit 3?
Yes, actually I would. And I think there's an argument for the TLC match to be number 1.
That's me. I'd go that way. And I'd put Angle Benoit number 2 and Austin Rock 3, just because of the finish.
Yeah, no, I do agree with the way it shook out, but I would say Austin Rock and the TLC match are almost tied.
Well, I tell you what, you don't want to be tied when you're playing 2K. So we want to tell you that this week's episode of Something to Wrestle is brought to you by the WWE Supercard Season 5, this collectible card battle game enjoyed by millions and millions of WWE fans, featuring your favorite superstars. We're talking the big names: The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ronda Rousey. And Season 5 of WWE Supercard is available now for free in the Apple App Store, Google Play, and Amazon's App Store. Check it out right now. Go visit wwe.2k.com/wrestle to get your free card pack. That's wwe.2k.com/wrestle, and you're going to get a free card pack. And while we're doing cards, we should send a very special happy birthday to the one and only Michael P.S. Hayes. Today is a big, monumental birthday for that man. He turned 60 years old today. How about that?
Do.
Do you want to have Jim Cornette or Dusty Rhodes or Macho Man or Johnny Ace or Vince McMahon sing him happy birthday?
Fuck that goddamn old Freebird motherfucker. Happy birthday, bitch.
Well, all right, there you go. If you'd like to, and you should, by God, you should send a happy birthday message to our buddy. He's been a big part of the show, and he's never appeared on the show because we don't do guests, but he did do a run-in at a live show once. He's at Michael P.S. Hayes and the number 1. At Michael P.S. Hayes 1. Today is his 60th birthday, and originally we were going to cover him today, but you guys were hot and heavy on Wrestlemania X-Seven, so here we are. Let's get to some questions here. We did some rapid fire questions on social media. I'm going to run through these. Bruce, are you ready?
I am ready.
Why was so much TV time put into the Rock Deborah manager connection? It seemed something big was happening, but I never got why. Was there a reason for this? And why was it dropped so quickly? That comes to us from Sean Blackford.
I don't think anybody cared. And when we got into it, it was a way to try and put a further wedge in between them being Rock and Austin, but I don't think anybody really cared. And it was a force more than anything.
CJ Newman wants to know, did William Regal get any grief for wearing the Intercontinental title upside down on the way to the ring?
He wore it upside down, that bastard. I don't think anybody noticed.
All right. Marcelo de Casas wrote, there are a bunch of great matches on this show. My question is, which match does Bruce believe doesn't get the credit it deserves?
I guess from listening to you, the Austin Rock match, but I think it does get the credit it deserves. And probably the Regal Jericho match, because it set the pace and it set the tone for the night, and it got off to a great start and may not get the love that it really deserves. It was good.
Let's talk a little bit about Fuber's question. He wants to know, did Linda need to practice kicking Vince in the balls? Now that sounds like a silly question, but at the same time, if you've never, tried to work a kick to the balls, that means you just really kick him in the balls. What happened?
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. No, it's here's the thing with someone that is not a seasoned worker, you just got to take it. And for her to try and practice that and pull that, it would look terrible.
Here's a rumor I never heard. This one comes to us from Scott. I heard rumor years ago that Triple H and Mike Tyson were considered for this show. How close was that to happening? I never heard that.
What?
Yeah. Apparently this guy thinks Mike Tyson was going to wrestle Triple H. Is that just made up?
Never heard that until just this moment ever.
Steven wants to know, why was the Gobbledygooker in a different outfit than the original one? Did the company not keep that one? Feels like that would have been in mint condition.
No, fuck. He toured all over the place after Survivor Series, and the old costume had disappeared and was in really, really bad shape. Well, it didn't disappear. It was in really, really bad shape.
I don't know why that's funny to me, but it is. Norm wants to know, what does Bruce think of the stage? On camera shots, you couldn't really see the Wrestlemania X-Seven fully, but they're disappointed with the look of the show.
That was a day of altercation because the original set, the way that it went up to get all of that in, blocked a shitload of seats, and the Astrodome was legitimately 100% sold out. And then on top of that, you had a lot of extras with people coming into suites and just different areas. So to try and accommodate another, I think it was almost 3,000 people that would have been affected if that had gone all the way to the roof like it was designed. it would have been it was a tragedy, and it was tough enough to do what we had to do to move people that we had to move once it was actually set up. But there was a lot of shuffling going on, and it was made bigger than was anticipated. Those tickets were sold, so we had to make concessions.
Great question from AJ. This WrestleMania was branded X-Seven. The year prior was WrestleMania 2000. The year following was X-8. Was there a deliberate effort to move away from the more traditional Roman numerals during the Attitude Era? And if so, why change it back to WrestleMania XIX, number 19?
A whim. No more Roman numerals. God damn it. We've got to get it. It's the year 2000. Just change for no other reason. Just change. And back in the day, I remember it would never change from Roman numerals, and then it changed, and then it changes back. So it may change again in the future.
Ted wants to know, are there any pictures of Bruce working Gorilla dressed as Brother Love?
I did not work Gorilla this match. Jerry Briscoe did.
So what'd you do the rest of the day?
Dude, I was training. I was warming up.
Come on.
I was watching match footage on all of the competitors in that battle royal, because look, Repo Man, he's sneaky. And I knew that. Yeah.
Tune in next week for keeping kayfabe, something to kayfabe with Bruce Prichard.
No, seriously, that's what I did. I just was getting ready for the match and watching the show.
Oh my God. That's so fucking dumb.
Why is that dumb?
It just is.
Hey, I'm not going to go out there and blow a quadruplicitic snippets at Chase.
David Bixenspan writes, the week of WrestleMania X-Seven is when the WWE started branding the female talent exclusively as divas. What led up to that decision?
Just a change in presentation and how, no different than superstars. The females were going to be divas. It was just a branding.
All righty. Downtown Howell Brown wants to know, do you think the promo package for Rock Austin is the best that the company ever produced?
One of the best ever. Yes. And it was, like I said, I watched it twice, and it was just that damn good. And the music fit the story.
Andrew wants to know, did Bruce enjoy kicking Jim Cornette's ass in the Battle Royal?
He kicked my ass a little bit too, but we had an awful lot of fun. And Corny and I looked at each other and said, I'm coming for you, and made sure that we were safe in that corner until he got eliminated quickly. And I immediately went, oh, fuck, man. Then mixed it up with Michael Hayes and the Goon and Bushwhackers and old Lakeem a little bit there. But no, it was a lot of fun, and we did that on purpose. We'd stay safe in our own corner of the ring.
Francis wants to know, who came up with the designs for the baseball jerseys for Mania?
Oh, that'd be art department people, but I think it was, I just thought they were cool as shit. I loved them. And it was an art department deal, I think, coming off of the Astros, because Houston had lost their football team by that time, but kind of playing off of the Astros and the Astrodome being a baseball stadium.
All right. Brad wants to know, and this is a great question. Corporal Kirshner was in the first graphic used on television for the gimmick Battle Royal. Is there a story or any recollection on why he was booked and then canceled, or was this just an error on the graphic? That's a fun question, because I didn't even know that was there, but he even tweets a picture of it here where he's top left next to Sergeant Slaughter.
Well, Kirshner was originally put into the thing, and then later on, I think he had a conflict or didn't want to do it, but he was one on the original list, and it may have been one of those situations where TV had a list of, okay, here's some of the people that will be in it, and Kirshner never got off the list.
Andrew wants to know, is there ever any talk or even possibility to keep Bobby Heenan around in a regular or semi-regular way on air after Mania?
Yeah, I think we all would have loved that. And, Bobby, I don't think Bobby was ready to come back in any kind of full-time capacity, but that was opening the door for Bobby to come back. Same thing with Gene, for both of those guys to come back and be used on a sparing basis in the future. But yes, we definitely would have loved to have had Heenan back.
You talked about one name, Horror Movie Barbecue wants to know, were there any other names who turned down an appearance in the Gimmick Battle Royal?
Again, the only one I really remember was Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster. And obviously something happened with Kirshner, and I don't remember what that was, but I know he was on the original list. But Terry Taylor is the only one that I remember, because I just thought, why the hell wouldn't you want to come and do it?
Donnie,
it's a good payday and go have fun.
Donnie wrote something I'd never heard before. There's long been rumors that Bret Hart was going to be the special guest referee for the Vince Shane match, with Mick Foley ultimately filling that role. Did WWE seriously negotiate with Bret to return here? And if so, how close did it come to happening?
No, not at that point. No, I don't even think that by that time that we were even talking to Bret. So that didn't happen for another year or two.
Mike Cyron wants to know what you thought about stealing finishers, Rock and Austin trading stunners and rock bottoms here.
Well, they weren't stealing it. They were using it against each other. And that was part of the story building up, was that, Austin, I'll beat you with the rock bottom, and Rock coming back, I'll beat you with the stunner. So it was a part of the story leading up to it, that they knew each other so well that they were able to use each other's finisher. And that was just part of the story to make this match unpredictable.
Beard of Riker wants to know, was the name for this WrestleMania sort of like one of the other Vinceisms, where you can't call it a belt, it's a championship? Backstage, did people refer to this show as X-Seven? Were they made to, or did everybody just still commonly refer to it as 17?
I was 17.
Hans Carpenter says, Raven claims he came within millimeters of cutting the building's power when he crashed the golf cart during the hardcore title match. How would it have been handled if he cut the power to the building? What would have been the protocol, and would you have had to offer refunds?
Well, no, he didn't come close to killing the power from the building. The power for a building that size it's all over the place. And no, that didn't happen. He came close to damn near electrocuting himself and fucking some shit up, but he never would have taken out the power for the whole building.
Well, all right. We're going to take out the power on this week's episode. We hope that you enjoyed WrestleMania X-Seven, and I look forward to your hate tweets. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. He is at Bruce Prichard, and we are out of time this week on the show, but we look forward to being back with you here next week. And if you haven't already, go snatch up a ticket and see myself, Bruce Prichard, and of course, good old JR on stage for the last time in New York City. Tickets are on sale right now at brucepritchard.com. It's the Monday after WrestleMania. You can still enjoy Raw, and then come check us out and wrap up your WrestleMania weekend in style. And stay tuned. In the coming weeks, we've got King Kong Bundy, Michael P.S. Hayes, and a whole lot more. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. And hopefully we'll try to get that video up there for My Way with Limp Bizkit, and go out of your way to watch that and that TLC from this show. Be glad you did. We're at Prichard Show on Instagram, at Prichard Show on Twitter, and out of time here on the show. Hit it, Bruce.
Shaka Khan.